How's it going, guys? So in today's video we're going to be talking about the ways that I edit my photos. And this is everything from taking my photos off my camera, storing them on my computer, to the editing that I do to them, and then saving them afterwards so they're easy to access in the future. So to start us off, we're going to be going to Lightroom Classic, and we're going to go right into the import dialog box. And basically what this does is it's an easier way for you to manage your photos. So once I have my photos imported, the import dialog will disappear, or you can hit cancel, whatever you need to do. And I'm left with the library screen here. So you can see on the left side here, I've got all my photos for 2017, all sorted by folder, down to the month, and then when you go into the month, you get basically by day. And it just makes it a little bit easier to find the right photo that you're looking for. So the photos we're going to be working with today is this set right here, all 8 of these. So the way I choose my photos is basically the same whether I've got 200 or 8 as we have here. You can see in these 8 shots, it's all the same thing, and there's not much change to exposure to anything, but there's minor changes in the scenery. And you can see there's a little bit of a different zoom between the first 4 and the last 4. So I like the first 4 a little bit more because it gives you more of a full picture of what the image looks like. And it's just these minor differences. You start picking up, you just kind of keep going between them to find the one you like. So if I go into the grid view, you'll be able to see that on number 2 here, I've got a green color label. And basically what this tells me is this is a photo that I want to edit either now or sometime in the future. Another thing you can do in Lightroom is set up a smart collection. So I have a smart collection set up that anytime I put a green color label on a photo, it gets pulled into that smart collection, so it's easy to find later on in the future when I have some time to edit photos. So we'll jump into my to be edited smart collection quickly here, and there's a little bit of a spoiler alert here. These are some photos I'm going to be editing in the future. But you can see it is a proven method. One of the best things about having that smart collection set up is it allows you to basically get that quick and fast look at which pictures you want to edit without going back through that whole 2017 year and trying to find all those photos again. So to get us started with editing, we're going to choose number 16 because that's the one we're going to be working on today. Going to the develop panel, and this is where we're going to start doing all our general changes. What I like to do with Lightroom is do all of kind of my generic changes and edits to the picture. So that's things like color, getting my color into a spot where I'm happy with it, getting my exposure and shadows and highlights and all that stuff to a point where I'm happy with it. So we're just going to go through each of the settings that I use and kind of I'll talk about them as we go through them. So the first option is white balance, and I generally don't change this unless I'm doing something where the white balance is very obviously off. In this case, I think the camera did a good job. With exposure, I don't generally change this first. Exposure is one of those things I like to change at the end. So the first thing we're going to change is the contrast. And for my style of photography, I really like high contrast images. So we're going to bump this up right about, actually we're going to take it down to 50 here. And this just gives a super intense and bright image. One of the things I do suggest when you're getting into editing is, for me, I know I like high contrast, so I'm going to jump that one up. But for the highlights slider here, I don't really know what I'm looking for. So basically all I'm going to do is drop the highlights all the way down, take the highlights all the way up, and that way you get a good idea of kind of what the two extremes are. So we're going to go a little bit on the higher end, not a lot, because again, we don't want to blow out too much of the detail. Same thing with shadows. We're going to take it all the way down. That makes our image way too black in the bottom half there. And then we're going to take it all the way up, and that does do a pretty good job. That brings back a lot of the detail. But what you might notice, and this one I think I did pretty good, when you bring the shadows up, this is where you're going to start noticing noise. So if you have your ISO pretty much over anything in 200 or plus. So in the case of this image, we're not going to bring the shadows all the way up because I think that puts too much detail to the photo. So I still want to leave some darkness under that bridge. And then for the whites. So whites is very similar to highlights, but it's targeting specifically things that are white in the photo. So we're going to take this down just a little bit because the highlights we brought up quite a bit compared to what I would normally do. So we're going to bring the whites down a little bit just to kind of balance that out. Same thing with the blacks. Since I brought the shadows up, I want to bring the blacks down a little bit so that we've got a little bit more of that pure black in some places. And we're going to do a very minor adjustment there. Next up is clarity. And what clarity does basically is this, when you see all those like super gritty, very manly looking photos, they're super high clarity, just like that. And so I think it looks really cool, but it doesn't really work for the photo. So taking our clarity up to 40 gives us a lot of that nice sharp detail, makes it very interesting to look at, while not giving it that super gritty appearance. Now for vibrancy and saturation, I don't generally use these. I don't really like to use them because they're very general, they affect the whole image, there's not a lot of control in them. So moving on to the tonal curve now, basically all this does is gives you better control over your highlights, shadows, and your lights and dark areas. So in here what you can see is I'm going to bring the highlights up again. And basically all this does is just gives us a little bit more intense orange right around here. So with the lights, I'm going to bring them down just a little bit. I don't want to make it too dark, but I also want to make the sky seem more like night is coming rather than purely it's just an intense sunset. And then with darks, I want to bring my darks up a little bit. Not too much because I still want to hide some detail in that bridge. And shadows I'm going to bring down. Actually, shadows I might bring up a little bit just to bring back some detail. So from there, we're moving on to the hue, saturation, and luminous panel. And this is probably the most important part of this editing step because this is where you get your colors to the right look. So the area I like to work with first is the saturation. So the first thing we're going to go through is the reds. And you can see here, the only place you really have reds is right in the edge of the clouds here. And we don't even have that much. So I can bring the saturation all the way up, bring it all the way down, and you don't really notice a difference. So we're just going to bring it up a little bit just to give it that little bit of an intense feeling right around there. And then same thing with the orange. We know we have a ton of orange, so we're just going to bring it up a little bit. We actually might bring it up a lot just because it makes it look pretty cool. Then with yellows, we're going to bring them up, make it nice intense sunrise. So we don't have any green in this image. So basically all we're going to do is just take the greens all the way down to the bottom. As for aqua, I think we do have a little bit in our sky. Yeah, you can see just above where our sunset stops is we do have some aqua in the sky here. And we definitely have blue in the top there, so we're going to bring that all the way up to give us that super exciting and intense blue sky. Then on to purples and magentas. I don't think we have a lot. I can see a little bit in the snow down here and the clouds up here, but other than that, I'm not seeing a lot of that. So we're just going to bring it all the way down, just because that way our snow is white and black basically, and our clouds are more of a gray tone rather than having that magenta or purple. So going back to the hue panel now, I'm not going to go through and change anything because all the colors are pretty much at the right value that I like. I think it looks very good like that, and I don't want to mess around with the hues that much. So the next thing we're going to play around with is the luminance. And basically what this does is it takes a color and changes the brightness or darkness of it. So if I take the slider all the way down, the reds here, you can see that it makes the front end of those clouds a little bit darker. If I bring it up, it makes them a little bit lighter. So we're going to take them up a little bit, that way we get less of this dark kind of blackness in the clouds, and it becomes a little bit more of a brighter, more exciting feeling. Moving on to aqua and blue, we're going to take the aqua up a little bit, and we're going to take the blue down. And we're taking the blue down because I want this to feel like a night sky coming in. So next up is split toning. And basically what this allows you to do is it lets you add a color to either the highlights or the shadows, or both, depending on what you want to do. So what we're going to do in our highlights, we're going to add that nice warm orange tone. In the shadows, we're going to go ahead and give it a nice deep blue color. So this gives us just a super cold feeling to everything that's not being touched by that sunset, which is a very cool look in my opinion. For lens corrections, again, this is a very simple one. You go in, you check both boxes, and this is always extremely reliable because Lightroom has thousands of profiles for every lens that exists basically. So that is my editing in Lightroom. So to start us off, there's one very, very important step when you're first moving your work into Photoshop. So if I right click on my image here, you can see I've got the option to edit in, either edit in Adobe Photoshop or open as a smart object in Photoshop. And these two options are very, very, very similar, but can screw you over big time if you don't hit the right one. So if I was to hit edit in Adobe Photoshop, basically what this would do is it would flatten the image, put it into Photoshop, and that's it. I can't make any changes to that image later on. It is as it is. So what you want to do is open as a smart object in Photoshop. Photoshop will launch up here. Once we've got our image in Photoshop, we can double click on the thumbnail here and we get the camera raw dialog box. Now this has all the exact same options as in Lightroom, all in the same interface, all changeable in Photoshop. So one of the changes I generally make in Photoshop to pretty much every photo is I like to go in and add a photo filter. But what I like to do with these is use a blending mode with them. So we're going to choose a nice orange warming filter. And then we're going to go into the blending modes and go with soft light. So we're going to take the opacity down a little bit so it's not so intense. So with my second photo filter, I'm going to use the layer mask and put a gradient on. And basically all this will do is make my top of my sky very, very blue. So the final thing we're going to do before we save and close the document is do cropping and straightening. So the first thing I'll point out here is that you can see that our bridge is very much so on a slant. Our left side is way above the line and our right side is below the line. So in this case, we're going to go with the last crop factor that I used is this 3:2 ratio. Because I think that this just gives that very appealing look. But we are going to bring it down a little bit because I don't want to have all these street lights and all that over here. And because I want to have the sunset kind of the center focus. We're going to adjust it so that our bridge hits this bottom line here just about. And we want to make sure that we're not getting that intersection in there and that we're getting some of these high rises. So from here, this is kind of the last step that can screw you up. And what you want to do is make sure you go save as, And for me, what I've done is I've saved all of my edited photos in one place as Photoshop documents. So that is basically my entire editing technique. It is not that hard, it gives you a fairly good result, and it's very reliable. If you have questions or you need advice about editing, feel free to leave some in the comments or send me a message. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The next video that'll be coming out, I'm not too sure what we're going to be doing. I think it'll have something to do with my website design that I'm working on. And yeah, so if you guys are looking forward to that, feel free to subscribe, hit the like button on this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next one.